Hi, and welcome to the 29th episode of Dreamers and Doers, where I interview people who follow their passion and use it to make a massive positive impact in the world. And I think that's you, Niraj. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. This is a great opportunity.
And I'm very honored to have you in the show because, well, I've seen you doing shows with Mindvalley and with Wim Hof. And
Mm,
I'm really interested lately in breathwork. And you're one of the top experts in the world. So thanks again for being here.
thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
And so you're often called the Renegade Pharmacist, which is really
Y-
interesting. So I'd love you to share a bit your story and especially how you got into breathwork.
Yes, the renegadepharmacist.com, that's my website that I created several years ago, which was basically around all of the knowledge I had from healing myself from a chronic illness. So what happened was I got very sick with a very pretty serious stress-related condition called ulcerative colitis. I was like left housebound
Mm-hmm.
for a year. It's an autoimmune condition. You basically shit blood like 40 times a day. It's pretty nasty. And what happened was I was given like two choices. Either I take a drug that hasn't been tested before, or I have my colon removed and have a colostomy bag and shit in a bag for the rest of my life. So at the age of 30, that was like horrifying, So, and I had literally been housebound for a year, so you can imagine how
Wow.
depressing that was. But I just prayed and prayed, and they say that God, what it really means is gift of desperation, because God seems to come to you in your most desperate moments. And literally, I was praying for a third route, and then to the rescue came a very close friend of us now, Swami Ambikananda, who's a yoga teacher in the UK, and she told me you have a gift because if you can heal yourself from this illness without the
Mhm.
medications, with your background, you'll be a great inspiration to other people. And I took her advice on. At first, I was a bit skeptical. I was like, I just thought this was all a bit woo woo, like all this kind of
Mhm.
meditation and yoga and all that stuff.
Were you not at all into it at the time?
Not really. Like I couldn't even touch my toes. So yeah, I wasn't much of a yogi myself, but um, I was willing to give it a go. And to my surprise, like within 3 months, I was back to normal. And I was like then making a pact that I will do whatever I can to get these techniques out to as many people as possible. And what I realized is the challenges that I faced in doing this was, firstly, people were like me, right, skeptical of anything that was alternative. Secondly, if they had heard of things like yoga or things like that, they found it was either boring, took too long, or they just couldn't stretch or bend or anything like that. So
Mhm.
what I realized was going back to the roots of these things, that actually um, a lot of the teachings and the meaning of like things like yoga and breath work and all this stuff had all become a bit convoluted. So it was very confusing. There's so many different styles and different
Mm.
approaches and different ways of doing yoga, or like pranayama is the one that most people shy away from. That they don't talk about it much because they don't understand it. Pranayama is basically energy control, and through breath, for controlling your breath, because the breath is our way to influence the physiology.
Mm.
However, if you go to a pranayama class, or you see them on, if you see them on videos or things like that, it's usually either like a bunch of uh, very kind of slim, trim, sexy ladies in hot pants, you know, breathing from one nostril to another, or it's like just seems like too religious. It puts people off, right?
Mm.
So I was like, how do I make this more fun? How do I make this more accessible? And that's when I discovered like the power of music and how you can use music as a way to create audio programs where people just follow along with music to change their state. and use this as a tool to go in there and reprogram the consciousness, because yoga and pranayama are just tools, methods of getting back in touch with our bodies and being able to influence our physiological states. So these are ways of controlling the energy. And now quantum physics shows us that E equals M. Okay, so E equals M, meaning everything is energy. Matter and energy are all one, and we're all connected. Everything is connected. So yoga is just merely a way of us to be able to harness the potential of knowing this understanding that everything is energy. So you can use this for various purposes. You can use it to live longer, be more happier, be stronger, to raise and change your moods at will. You know, you can even do some awesome stuff like lower your heart rate, increase your core body temperature, and do all these kinds of stuff, like appear like magic tricks, but actually can all be very well explained through science. So I was also like, the other thing is like, there's a whole load of people very skeptical about anything kind of as esoteric. So I was like, I have to bring science to this stuff. So I went on a big search, and I went on a big research mission around the world, looking for people who were master yogis, master practitioners of breath work and all these things, and people who may have done scientific studies to bring together all of this knowledge into one platform. That was the renegadepharmacist.com, which has become like a very, very popular website around the world. And it also, because I made one of the most viral infographics of all time, which is all about, well, it was probably one of the most viral articles of all time, about Coca-Cola. It went massively viral. What happens one after you drink a can of Coke? It opened the doors for me to meet a lot of other people. It caught the attention of people like Wim Hof, and ended up becoming good friends with him. And we learned from each other, actually. I did a lot of music for the Wim Hof. In fact, the whole Wim Hof method uses my music. I'm a music producer as well. So I went back into my passion for music. And what I realized was that actually one of the root causes of chronic illnesses in this world, and why there's such a big epidemic, is because we become robotized. We're human beings becoming robotized, and we're working in like robotic environments, factory-like environments, doing stuff that we don't really enjoy. And there's two questions you got to ask yourself every morning, because if you don't answer these in the right way, it will mean that you're going to get sick. Because this is a true, in my opinion, true definition of whether you're healthy. If you wake up with absolute enthusiasm to do a hard day's work, all right, then you're healthy. If you wake up with absolute enthusiasm to be compassionate to other people, then you're healthy. But if you're waking up feeling like you have to do something to survive, you feel like you're having to do this to fit in, or you're only being nice because you have to, because you have to do it to fit into your environment. There may be a boss that is bullying you all day long, things like that, and you're just faking being nice, and you're staying there and being in this kind of stress on an ongoing basis. If this carries on for long periods of time, you're going to get sick. So we need to now change a lot of things, the way people have become robotized. We need to go back inwards and look at what is it that we can really offer to the world. What value can we bring, and what passions and interests do I have? Because I really believe that you can only be valuable when you're feeling good, about yourself. Otherwise, you're just like half your potential. You're only half your potential.
You come far from an empty cup.
So a big part of what I do now is I help people get back into their flow, get back into what they really want to do without fear, and giving people strategies on how to do that. So the Renegade Pharmacist has become like a great resource for people, different areas of their life. If you're chronically sick, there's solutions for you there. If you're somebody who has perfect health but wants to get the edge, there's information for you there. But the cornerstone of all of it is the breath. The breath work is the foundations, because the science of breath, Swaradhara in Sanskrit, pranayama, the science of breath, has changed my life. It's transformed my life. The knowledge of knowing how the breathing influences your physiology, something I learned in 2010 going through this illness, has made shifts in my life in ways that I can't even explain, like beyond comprehension. So I firmly believe that everyone must learn a foundation of how the breath controls the body, and then learn about how this influences our cells, every single cell in our body, because our body, our physiology, is a community of cells coexisting with each other and living symbiotically with each other. In fact, we are more germ cells than we are human cells. We are actually 3 times more germ than we are human. So what are we really? We are just germs, a community of organized germ cells. So we have to understand, what is it that influences the physiology of each one of these cells? What makes a happy community exist together? And it all comes all the way back to breathing. Every time, the breathing is the one method of creating a harmony within the physiology, and it's through that harmony that comes positive emotion. Through positive emotions like passion and joy comes success.
And that's why you think that this breath work is kind of the basis for then finding more life purpose of happiness in life in general.
Yes, because if your breathing is a reflection of your moods, your emotions, and you can't be successful and happy for a long time if your breathing and everything is erratic. So you can observe people who breathe, who are successful in the way they breathe, and you'll see they actually have a different rate to somebody who's chronically stressed. And and those people who may appear to be very successful may actually be internally very stressed, and you can tell straight away from the way they breathe if they're chronically stressed or not. So the breath is also an indicator of your emotion.
And so going forward, can we just present a little bit maybe the different types of breathing techniques that are quite famous, and go then towards your technique, the soma breath, and expand on the science? So
of course.
I'd love to present a bit like what are the major kind of breathwork techniques that are used.
Yeah, certainly. So let's talk about more recent times. So in more recent times, the 2 breathwork techniques that have become very popular is holotropic by Stanislav Grof and rebirthing by Leonard Orr. So holotropic breathwork was created by Stanislav Grof, who was one of the first researchers into the psychedelic therapy. He was one of the first people to use LSD in psychedelic research and as a form of therapy. And what happened was then it got made illegal. So he had such good results with the psychedelic LSD that he needed an alternative. So he came up with this breathwork, because he realized that ancient shamanic breathing techniques can induce a psychedelic effect on the body, right? It's not going to be exactly the same, but it does create a similar result.
Yeah, I was listening to his podcast with Tim Ferriss, and his experiences just through breath were pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So, but the thing with that is that it's like psychedelics. You're not going to do them all the time. And it's a form of therapy, and it's like, you maybe even you only ever do it once or twice in your life, right? It's not something as a regular daily habit. Same thing with rebirthing. Rebirthing is pretty much the same thing as holotropic. It comes from this ancient pranayama as well. I mean, if you read into the backstory of rebirthing, he says that he was trained in it from a immortal yogi who lives 3,000 years old or something like that. I mean, it's a very weird kind of backstory. It's not the kind of thing that I would be able to use to inspire kind of people who work in an office to do, because it's such an out there story behind it. However, it has also the same kind of benefits as like holotropic breathwork. They're pretty much the same thing. They come from these ancient shamanic breathing rituals. In pranayama, which is an ancient shamanic breathing ritual from India, but in India, the ancient shamans are called rishis. Okay, so these are people who basically had hacked their physiology to a level where they could, stay healthy and happy and strong for very long periods of time and live much longer than we do now, and also do incredible displays of strength and feats and magic even. So these people were the ones who created the first schools of yoga, tantra, and pranayama. So pranayama is the tradition that I'm more focused on. So qigong is another breathing technique which also derives from pranayama. And Buddhism with Vipassana, also its roots come from India originally, because Buddhism also comes originally from India. So my focus, being an Indian and being biased because of that, has always been in pranayama, because it is one of the most ancient forms. But it also, if you look back further and further in history, the origins of pranayama and yoga come from the legend of Soma. So Soma was a psychedelic ritual that the rishis would take. It's referenced 50,000 times in the Rig Veda, which is the world's oldest religious text. And they would take this to have direct communication with the spirit world, with the gods, have divine downloads, and use this wisdom and knowledge to make civilization more successful. And this is very similar to like an ayahuasca journey or magic mushroom experience, right? So what happened was, as people started to migrate and go to different parts of the world, they started to find that the soma starts to run out, and they're all addicted to soma. Everyone's hooked on the soma for their health and wellness and their well-being and wisdom and all this stuff. So they all freak out. So they're like, right, we must go inwards to discover how to create the soma within, because they believed strongly that we already have all the substances that exist in nature already within us. And that comes the origins of Tantra. And from Tantra comes pranayama, yoga, and all these things. And basically what it is was the man's pursuit to create the soma within, which is, the soma within is like your own endogenous DMT that invokes the psychedelic experience. However, in doing this, they realized that actually we have a direct influence over autonomic nervous system. And that means that we can actually switch off stress, switch on stress. We can turn on the rest and digest mode at will, do this all consciously and voluntary. Wim Hof was one of the guys in our more recent times who he's trained in many different techniques. And, most of it, what he comes from is very similar to pranayama and tumo as well. And he basically went under scientific investigation, showed that you can influence your immune system at will, right? I did the same thing 10 years ago when I healed myself from chronic illness, same thing. And in the 70s, Swami Rama, he went to America under scientific study. He stopped his heart for 10 seconds. He created tumors on his skin at will. He raised the body temperature of one hand up by 10 degrees and the other hand down by 10. He did all kinds of miraculous things.
Do we have records of this?
Yeah, this is all there. You can look it all up. Swami Rama.
I'll look it up and share it with you.
Share this because it kind of got buried a little bit, but it's all there because the drug companies don't want us to know about this stuff so much. So it's there. It's just it didn't get mainstream publicity. So you find it all. It just didn't get mainstream publicity. So basically, what happened was then I was compelled to find out, how did I get healed? And then through that, I discovered that there's already yogis who have done a lot of this stuff. They've already, they've already done studies on people many years before. So it was nothing new. So I was like, okay, so then there is something to these breathing techniques. There has to be. I've got enough proof. But how do I now make it more accessible? And so what I did was I also studied a lot with the Heart Math are brilliant scientists as well, all about the health of the heart, coherence, and heart rate variability, and how to get into these kind of healthy heart state, emotional states, where the heart is in its element, in its flow, which has a knock-on effect over your whole physiology. So they talk a lot about coherence and rhythmic breathing, and the cornerstone of yoga is rhythmic breathing, breathing a rhythm, because physiologically, when you breathe in a rhythm, your breath has a rhythm, right? Inhale and exhale, right? And actually, every single function in your body is rhythmical. Your circadian rhythm, which is your sleep cycles, wake and sleep cycles. Mm-hmm. You have infradian rhythm, okay? And these rhythms are all associated with your hormonal system, and that's how we function. So every single function in biology has a rhythm to it, okay? So that means, and if the case is that the breath is the primary controller of all these rhythms, then by consciously controlling our breath, it means we can control every rhythm that's going on in our body. All right. And that's literally what the system of pranayama is. It's a system of breathing techniques that are based on a foundational rhythm that allows you to influence your physiology, and it creates like a pharmacy of different breathing techniques so that you can activate your inner pharmacy and create your own medicines. So this is what I brought to the surface. So soma is what it is it's a series of breathing techniques, but the core foundation is this one called the awakening. The awakening uses rhythmic breathing and breath retention techniques to create physiological adaptation to having less than normal oxygen in the body. Your body adapts to having less oxygen through breath retention to becoming stronger and more fitter and healthier. So I can tell you a little bit about the science of how that works. But the cornerstone, basically, the cornerstone of all of the most revered techniques of pranayama is kumbhaka, breath retention, and rhythmic breathing.
Okay.
So I can explain to you why that is.
Yeah, I did yours this morning, actually, your webinar. It was really, really interesting, and I felt really good after. It actually reminded me quite a bit of, it's quite similar with the Wim Hof method, right? And but it was great. So yeah, I'd be really interested to know more in details how it works scientifically, because I think with Wim Hof and you, what makes it really interesting is the fun part and the scientific part, right?
Yes. Yeah. So my thing is very much about the rhythmic breathing. So, and everything is timed to music. So everything is in a perfect rhythm.
Addition, definitely.
Yeah. And which makes it more original to the tribal ancestors who you'd use drumming and rhythmic patterns for the breathing. We also, so like the way Wim does it, Wim's method is more towards getting into ice baths. That's the function of it, is to get into an ice bath, to generate heat in the body, get into the ice bath. Mine is more about getting into these bliss states, these coherent bliss states, where you're in this flow, and then over time it creates this adaptive change to oxygen, so you can progressively hold your breath for longer periods of time. And in doing so, the side effect of that is that you produce DMT naturally, and that is where we create these heightened states of super consciousness, and that we build up over time. So you don't jump into that straight away. You build up over time to get better and better at creating that.
Do you have sometimes experiences that are like quite likely to a DMT experience?
Yeah, of course. And like the people who do our awakening journey, which is over 21 days, the last week, that's pretty much what, actually they start getting it usually in the second week, but the last week is designed to get you into that DMT experience. And that's when a lot of things start to come out and reveal itself to you about the true nature of reality, who you are, your true self. Because in yoga, it's all about knowledge of self, know thyself. and they're not one size fits all. Like, as I was saying, we've been robotized in the West, right? So people have become more kind of like made into an average number. Everyone's just an average. Like, your heart rate is this, your average cholesterol reading's this. Everything is an average, right? Meaning that there's no room for individuality. So the way medicine treats people in the West is through this reductionist scientific perspective that that gets rid of this individuality. So what may be high blood pressure for someone may actually be low blood pressure in reality for somebody else, whereas medicine treats everyone the same. This is the biggest problem we got in the world. So in order to break this, we have to go back into ourself and know thyself. All right. And it's the feeling that is the most important. Actually being in touch with who we are and our feeling, and being in touch with the body. The soma actually means body in Greek. That's what my method is all about, it goes back to the roots, and it gets you in touch with who you really are, at a core level. And we have various exercises, like series of questions and self-inquiry, to help you understand more about the nature of reality and how your thoughts are shaped by things. So as I said, Wim's method is very much about, like, let's climb up a mountain or jump in an ice bath, which has its own purpose for, like, strength, whereas mine is more about the spirit, the soul,
So
and they both work very well together.
Let's jump into, because when I listened to your webinar, there was a part on how it works with the nervous system, and you have quite a good knowledge of this. So when you look at your technique, can you explain scientifically why it's very healthy?
Yeah, of course. So basically, rhythmic breathing, what that means is breathing to a beat. So say you have music that has a beat like this. Like, dance music has a...
Yeah, and I'll send a link to your webinar, because I love that part.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. So this is the cornerstone of soma, is to breathe in a rhythm as much consciously as possible during the day. All right. And when you breathe in a rhythm, you're breathing in for the same length of time as you're breathing out. And that creates a state called coherence, because when you breathe in, you stimulate sympathetic nervous system. When you breathe out, you stimulate parasympathetic nervous system. So breathing in a rhythm means you'll stimulate the sympathetic, parasympathetic the same rate. This has a knock-on effect on your physiology. It balances out your physiology. So if you're very sympathetic dominant, if there's a lot of fight and flight and stress going on, it will balance it back out.
So
if you're
can you explain what's the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system?
Yes. Yeah. So sympathetic nervous system the autonomic nervous system has two branches. Sympathetic is the energy, action, motivation side, but it also is what creates adrenaline and stress in the body if it goes on for too long. The adrenaline is essential. However, if the emotions are under stress, like if you're under fear or jealousy or envy, it creates a contraction in the body. You go into fright and paralysis. Paralysis is where you freeze up, right? When you freeze up, you contract. And fear does this. It can make you contract. And what that does is it causes blood flow to block in your body, right? So if you get tension in the body, right, blood flow stops going to certain areas, and that leads to disease. And it often is the areas in your abdomen get compressed, and it causes contraction and it leads to disease. All right. So by rhythmic breathing, we can actually correct that and bring us back more into balance, where instead of contraction, you get more expansion. So you may still have a bit of adrenaline, but you're expanding. You produce different biochemistry in the body. So instead of producing adrenaline and cortisol is what causes contraction. You produce DHEA, which causes dilation, expansion, right? Which means you get better blood flow, and you'll get heightened emotional states like joy and passion. You're more in your flow, right? Now you can alter this rhythm as well. You can actually change it to 2-4. So you're breathing in for 2 and out for 4, but repetitively to a rhythm. 2-4 rhythms, okay, stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system more. So 2-4 rhythm is breathing out for 4 beats and in for 2, right? Which means you stimulate the rest and digest mode, you cause a relaxation in the body, and you go into more of a kind of a psychedelic trance state as well. So we can use these 2 rhythms to influence the physiology. We can either become more in our flow with good energy, with balance, or we can go into a relaxation and go into meditation. So I like to combine the 2 breathing patterns because they help the body in different ways. And we teach people how to use intention, on how to use rhythm with intention to change different states in the body and feelings in the body. Now that also prepares you, because you don't want to be doing rhythmic breathing for too long without following up with the next thing. And actually, here's the difference again between Wim Hof and me. Wim's mantra is all about breathe more, motherfucker, right? we're not about that. So pranayama is all about breathing less, actually, over time, because by breathing less, you become stronger, okay? You become fitter, you become healthier. And being the measure of how long you can hold your breath, okay, is a measure of how healthy you are. And actually, another measure of, and these are the 2 measures that we teach our people doing soma to measure how healthy you really are. You don't need loads of machines. You don't need expensive biofeedback. You don't need any of that crap, because you already have the best technology that exists in nature, and that is our own inner technology. All right, and so just by knowing how long you can hold your breath for, right, is a measure of your vital capacity. And the vital capacity is a measure of the strength of your heart and your cardiovascular system, which has a knock-on effect on every other function in your body. So how long you can hold a tone, like a tone would be like chanting Om. If you can go, I mean, I can do it for ages, yeah. But if you can, like some people can only do that for like 15, 20 seconds.
Yeah,
I mean,
I always get a bit competitive during my yoga classes.
Yeah, and that's good. That's a good thing. Yeah, we should all compete with ourselves to see how far we can go with that, because that's the true measure of health, the vital capacity. Okay, ancient yogis knew this thousands of years ago. Now we're bringing it back, and science has proven this. Okay, so basically, here's the way you do this. So to make yourself more efficient and have a stronger, healthier heart, we have to work on the area where energy is produced in the cell, and that's the mitochondria. So mitochondrial function of every cell in the body is the true representation of your overall health. And there's a lot of studies now. David Asprey's done a lot of great work on this, the Bulletproof Coffee guy, on mitochondrial function, how it affects your brain health. There's so many studies going on now on mitochondrial function and its relationship with your overall health and your susceptibility to getting disease and things like that, and depression even, and Alzheimer's and all these things. So what is the mitochondria? Mitochondria in the cell is the energy centers, the battery pack of the cell. It's what creates life, pretty much, because without that energy, there is no life. All right. So the mitochondria takes oxygen, combines it with the glucose to produce energy. All right. ATP. Now, the yogis knew that these little energy centers are just like fire, right? Fire in your cells. So just like a normal fire, I was making a bonfire the other night in Spain, and I was breathing onto the fire, like really bellowing onto the fire, and the flames would erupt, right? So just like Californian wildfires, too much oxygen, actually too much air, actually causes too much fire in the body. And it can cause stress and damage to the cells, leads to stress in the body. All right. So that's why, like, the Wim Hof method is great if you want to climb up a mountain where you need a lot of energy, but it's not good if you're somebody who's just on a day-to-day basis, not needing that stress. He's already maybe a bit stressed. He doesn't need that energy. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Whereas what I teach is actually more about extending your breath and training your body to become super efficient using oxygen. So breath retention is the secret to this. So when you do rhythmic breathing followed by breath retention, right, and you train yourself to stay longer and longer in a state of hypoxia. So hypoxia is when you lower your oxygen levels in your blood for brief periods of time. All right. So when your blood oxygen levels go below 80%, well, 90%, you're in a state called hypoxia. So imagine when you breathe in, oxygen goes into your bloodstream, binds to red blood cells. Okay. That means you have blood saturation of oxygen. Now we're mostly all the time around 98% oxygen saturation. We have an abundance of oxygen. That's not the problem. Well, the problem is getting that oxygen off those red blood cells and going into the tissue cells. In order to do that, we need carbon dioxide at the right level. All right. And actually, one of the problems that we have in this day and age is too much oxygen. We're over breathing. Right? Over breathing happens a lot under stressful emotions. When you're under stressful emotions, we tend to over breathe. Our body thinks that we're stressed, we need energy, and we breathe too much, and we get too much fire in the body. That leads to, that fire is free radical damage, oxidative stress. Why do you think we need antioxidants? All right. We need antioxidants because they protect against oxidative stress in the body. So therefore, what all of Soma is about is actually training you to become super efficient using oxygen. So you need less, right? Less stress, less fire, less damage to your cells. The more of a healthy person you become as a result, a less stress-free person, more imbalanced person you become. So here's how it works. So when you hold your breath for a certain period of time, the oxygen levels drop, okay? When they drop below a certain percentage, you actually create an adaptive response to that less oxygen. Your body thinks it's running out of oxygen, so it produces more red blood cells. You create EPO, which signals that. You actually dilate blood vessels, all right? Nitric oxide is produced. That's why you must use your nose as well. In order to produce nitric oxide, which is the master of all of this, it's the secret, okay? We want nitric oxide. We must use your nose. So this breathing through the mouth business is not good. It creates more stress. Okay. All right. So you must always breathe through your nose.
Was your technique always through the nose? I might have been.
Always.
Okay.
Always. Out through the mouth, in through the nose. That's the secret. Because through the mouth, you can actually control the exhale and extend the exhale. That's why we do these 2-4 rhythms, right? So you breathe in for a beat of 2 and out for 4. And you chicane the breath like, we even make a sound like a, ooh, ooh, ooh. That like slows the breath down and it vibrates your cells. It has emotion.
Why do you exhale through the mouth?
That's because you want to control the rate of breath. The mouth is a very good way of controlling the exhale rate. With the nose, it's harder to do, but you can do it, but it's harder. Okay. Right? But in through the nose, out through the mouth. The in through the nose is important because breathing through the nose stimulates nitric oxide. Breathing through the mouth doesn't. Breathing through the nose you have hairs, and the hairs filters the oxygen, the air, and gets rid of all the dust and shit. All right. Okay, and we live in a polluted atmosphere in the cities, so we must use our nose to filter the air. Otherwise, we're going to get a lot of allergies and stuff. All right. It also warms the air down. So one of the reasons why people get colds and flus in the winter is because of the cold, damp air going in through the mouth, not being filtered, and causing an allergic response in the lungs. So breathing through the nose, it warms the air first, and it stops that cold, damp air from affecting the lungs in an irritant way.
I actually had a friend who's promoting it. Do you know Siddha Yoga?
Yeah.
And they talk a lot about this. I stopped cutting the hair in my nose actually on the recommendation. Yeah.
Ah, okay, cool. Yeah, breathe through your nose is the way forward, right? So so that happens, and then so when you hold your breath for periods of time, the longer what happens is you basically make the mitochondria more efficient. It trains your mitochondria to become more efficient using oxygen. Okay. That leads to stronger mitochondria. And then your vital capacity gets longer over time. And you can hold your breath for longer periods of time. And that then makes you fitter and healthier and has all these other benefits that I'm telling you about. But we need to do this in a steady way. It has to be done systematically. You can't just rush in there and become a master of this stuff. You have to train yourself. So your mitochondria is like a muscle, you know, like you train your muscle, you must train your mitochondria in the same way, gradually over time. Otherwise you can cause damage as well. So we have to do it with an instructor. You have to do it properly over time in a structured way. And yoga is actually, the purpose of yoga is to train yourself under contraction, right? So have you heard of Tony Robbins?
Yeah, I went to date with this stimulus last May.
So his favorite exercise is static contraction. It's called functional isometric contraction. And there's a guy called Bob Hoffman who made it very famous. And he studied Russian athletes, powerlifters, and their secret is this functional isometric training, is where they do their exercise under maximum effort and contraction. So yoga, what happens is when you do a yoga pose, you contract the muscles and you're meant to stay in that contraction to the point of exhaustion. Because what that does is it controls the blood flow to your oxygen. It stops the blood flow to your muscles, and it forces your muscles to use up all of the nutrients in the muscles. So what that means is that your muscle then adapts to becoming stronger next time. However, if you're always moving the muscle, if you're doing like dumbbells, right, like this, up and down, what happens is always blood flow going to your muscles. So that's like basically riding a bike with stabilizers. You don't become stronger, okay? It takes longer to become stronger. So that's why Tony Robbins is all about functional isometric contraction, which is like pushing weights under maximum effort. There's another technique called 10x, what's it called? Something loading. I can't remember the full name. But anyway, it's again same concept. You're pushing like maximum effort and staying in contraction for as long as possible, right? That's how you build your stronger muscles. Whereas with yoga, you're doing it through body weight and you're holding each pose to exhaustion. And what that does, rather, if you look at a lot of the yoga out there, you're moving from one pose to the next, right? Which is actually like riding the bike with stabilizers again, because if you're just flowing from one pose to another, you're not really training the muscle. You're not getting stronger. You're not really working the muscle. You're just moving from one pose to the next. So that's more like an aerobic exercise. We're doing anaerobic exercises. Anaerobic means you're training under no oxygen, like without oxygen. This makes you much more efficient at using oxygen. So then you'll be able to monitor this. Then you'll be able to do ORMs that last for a long time. You'll be able to hold your breath for much longer. So we really recommend, we train people to do the yoga in the right way, and we train people to do the breath retention in the right way with rhythmic breathing to become super efficient using oxygen. This means that then during the day you breathe less. You may only breathe 3 or 4 times a day, and that's the goal. Is 3 or 4 times a minute. That's the goal. Is to breathe 3 or 4 times a minute.
Yeah, people at home don't breathe 2 or 3 times a day. Yeah, sorry.
So that means like your breathing is a lot more slower, a lot more calmer, and then that is a reflection of your state of mind. So actually, in the mantra of yoga, actually, of this ancient tantric yoga, is Chitti Vitti Nirodha, which means make the mind tranquil. The whole goal of yoga is to make the mind peaceful, because our mind is our reality, basically. So if we have an erratic mind, we have erratic thoughts, we have an erratic life. If we want to have a happy, stable life where everything flows in the right way, then you must have a tranquil mind. And that's what soma is about, is to create a tranquil mind by going within and understanding ourselves and how everything works.
Yeah. And going back to the practice, so you talked about those experiences that are close to DMT, but it's also a daily practice, right? So I guess when you use it as a daily practice in a routine, it wouldn't be that intense. So what's an ideal, let's say, daily practice you'd have in your routine?
Yeah, so the average time usually is around 20 minutes to do the breathing techniques. That's usually consists of two rounds of the rhythmic breathing and breath retention. And then we would usually do another, say, depending on how long you want to do, of movement exercise and the soma yoga, which trains you to become more efficient using oxygen, right? So it does it in this, but it's not about doing gymnastics and acrobatics. It's about staying in one pose for as long as you possibly can. And so some people, they'll find that they can hold one pose for like 5 to 10 minutes even, so over every day you'll progressively be able to do less poses because they take so long to do, because you can hold it for so long. So your routine will usually consist of a few yoga poses that where you want to work on for that day, because you may have mastered some of the other poses, but you want to master a new set of poses. So you just add on a new pose each day, but the focus would be on about 20 to 30 minutes of breath work to train yourself to progressively hold your breath for longer periods of time. Some people who have a lot of time will literally be doing these techniques for an hour or two even, and staying in a samadhi state for as long as they can, because this is actually what some of the yogis would do, is they'll be able to hold their breath for or they'll be able to slow their breathing down to such a slow rate that they're producing massive amounts of this endogenous DMT and living in this kind of psychedelic state. But that's not for everyone, so we kind of made it simple for everyone to be able to enjoy. And some people who want to go that deep, they can, but you have to build up towards that.
Okay, yeah. I had a question about, when you had your disease, did you try standard medication? Was there any at first?
Medication?
Yeah.
For the first kind of month, I had some medications, but they weren't working. I was getting a lot of side effects, and so I ditched them after a month. Everyone thought I was crazy. And then I still suffered for at least another 6 months before I started trying the alternative techniques.
And do you sometimes take any traditional medication, or not at all?
Well, now?
Yeah.
No, not at all. No way.
Like you never take antibiotics or something like this?
I have once in the past taken antibiotics when I was very sick with a chronic. Well, I had a bacterial infection when I was in Thailand, because I live in the tropics. Okay. But that was the only time, and I do believe there is a place for antibiotics in certain cases like that, but they should never be taken for everyday kind of colds and flus and chest infections and things like that. Doctors give them out like they're sweets. They still do it, even though they're not supposed to. They still do it. So I highly recommend that you try alternative means, and the drugs should only be a last resort. And medication should never be used long term for things like high blood pressure and cholesterol and stuff like that, because they just don't work and they cause side effects. And that natural lifestyle changes is the only way to go.
And I'm listening to this morning. I really like. I don't want to expand too much on the drug industry, but it reminds me a lot of, what's going wrong also with the food industry, and how, let's say, the capitalist interest of this company sometimes goes against our health. I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you also about supplements, because that's something I was a bit wondering about lately. Like, do you take food supplements, and what's your advice on this?
Do I take supplements? So I used to be like really obsessed with vitamins and pills and supplements. And then
Yeah,
I did
you
a
talked about Dave Asprey, so that's what
yeah,
made
and
me
then I
think
did
about it.
a yeah, and then I did a bit of research on it and realized that a lot of the data that comes from the evidence of these supplements um, is a little bit kind of biased because the companies selling the supplements are doing the studies. So it became the same kind of problem as drug companies funding studies.
Mm.
So I couldn't see the difference between the two. So then I started to study Ayurveda,
Okay.
and Ayurveda has supplements in the form of herbal
Mm.
herbal supplements. So they have certain herbs, adaptogenic herbs, and other herbs that are either incredibly dense in nutrition or they work synergistically with each other, like ginger, for example, turmeric,
Mm.
garlic. The ingredients that are inside them synergistically work with each other to create a beneficial effects in the body. So
Mm.
garlic is one of the best anti virals there are, actually, but you have to use the garlic in its raw form and you need to chew the garlic,
Mm.
okay, to
Mm.
release the allicin, which becomes alanine, which is the active ingredient. But that also has other ingredients that makes it a
Yeah,
complete thing. Now, the
that's a
problem
bit,
with
yeah.
yeah, the
Yeah.
problem with supplements is that quite often they take out one single thing, an extract, and then they concentrate the extract. It's just like a drug,
Mm. Mm.
and it takes away all of the things that work in synergy with that extract,
Mm.
which is bullshit. So I'm not into extracts. I'm not into these like supplement companies that release studies that they funded. I'm
Mm.
more into whole foods and looking at what are like whole foods that have got evidence base behind them. So my staples for this is cacao, right?
Mhm.
So chocolate in the raw form, which is one of the considered the food of the gods in ancient times in South America. And I use a lot of cacao in my diet.
Mm.
I also love maca. Maca is another tonic food. It's a root, and it
Mhm.
also it's so nutrient dense, packed full of nutrition, very high in fiber as well. So is cacao. So these are like whole foods. And then I really love ghee. Ghee is like
Mm.
a clarified butter from
Mm.
India, and I love that because it gives you the exact source of fuel that your mitochondria loves, which is this uh, good essential fats. I love olive oil, I love
Okay.
olives. So I just eat a very healthy
Yeah.
diet.
Okay.
I don't take loads of supplements because I don't believe in them anymore. I used
Yeah.
to, but
Yeah.
I don't
I'm a
believe
bit the
in it.
same. I was on isogenics and then taking on it, and doing the research. I came to that same conclusion.
And I think they can cause more harm than good actually
Mm.
because they can put stress on the kidney. They can put that can have an effect over time, and also especially protein, high amounts of protein. You see people using a lot of protein supplements. We don't
Mm.
need that much protein,
Yeah.
man, right? Because that causes a load on the kidneys as well.
Yeah. 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 I just take B12. I think if people do plant-based mainly, that's the one thing. But yeah,
And I'm also
otherwise.
not one of these people who like thinks that you should only eat one meal a day. I'm not
Mm.
one of these people
Do you do
who's like you
fasting?
should be vegan. Yeah, I do like intermittent fasting, but I'm not like obsessed over it. I think
Mm.
in my grandma was she followed a lot of these Indian practices. She would eat
Mm.
she'd have a day off a week. She would
Okay.
eat mostly plant based, well, all plant based, vegetarian, except for she'd have like ghee But she would have one day off of a week where she wouldn't eat anything. So she would fast once, and I think that's really good. I do an Ayurvedic practice called saltwater intestinal cleansing, where you drink like a liter of warm salt water on an empty stomach in the morning, and it cleanses your bowels out, and you feel amazing after that. You do that. You can do that once a month or once a week. Some people do it once a week.
Okay, I'll try it. And let you know how it goes. I'll close a bit on nutrition, but yeah, the science on intermittent fasting is usually pretty amazing. But I really wanted to ask you a little bit about sound healing. I guess this, like, do you know a bit the science behind sound healing too and how it works?
Yeah, so sound healing, I mean, there's many different kind of theories. So if we talk about traditional sound healing, which is using like Tibetan bowls or gongs or
basically how it works, because for a Western mind like mine, I come from a place where like sound is just sound and wouldn't be healing, but I'm sure there is actually a really rational way to explain how it heals.
Yeah, let me explain. Okay, I don't believe that it's the miracle cure that's going to cure everyone. Okay, but there is some reason why people get benefits. So one of them could be the fact that, firstly, sound, if it's pleasant and you like it, has been shown by studies by certain scientists. Actually, one of them is called David Hawkins. He wrote a book called Power versus Force.
I'm reading Letting Go also, which is really good.
Yeah. So in that, he talks about, and he's a Harvard trained scientist. He talks a lot about the effect of positive music on the body. So music that's pleasant, like classical music, seems to have a calming effect on the physiology. So if you're healing, if you wanted to heal, it's usually because you're overstressed. So getting into a parasympathetic state is what we want to have, right? So tools like sound healing definitely help because they can calm your nervous system down, all right? So what that does then is it allows more blood flow to go to the areas where blood flow may be separated. So that can actually create some spontaneous healing effects in some people where that's been the problem, where they haven't been getting blood flow to those areas. The other reason why sound healing could help is the fact that we're 70% water, right? So water has sound has an effect over water. So Emoto has done certain studies, okay, Dr. Emoto, on the effect of sound on water. But there's been many others, like kind of studies been done, independent ones.
Was it the same study as when you send hate or love to water, or was that a different one?
He did that, yeah, intentional studies on water. I don't know if he was the one who did that, but that might have been one of the offshoots. But there's a guy called Gerald Pollack who discovered that there's a fourth phase of water. So the three phases that we know is ice, gas, and liquid, right?
Liquid, yeah.
But there's a fourth phase, which is living water, water that's alive, that seems to have a consciousness of its own, right? And he studied that this is the water that exists in our cells, that exists in plants when they're alive, and this is like living water. It has a kind of a consciousness to it. And he says that if we drink more of this kind of water by like juicing vegetables, having juicing cucumbers and things like that, it is more nourishing and healthy to the body. Okay, and music can charge water in a positive way that makes it alive, gives it a fourth phase to it. And this he's shown in studies. So originally, like in the olden days, the people would like bless water, call it holy water, right? They'll charge water. So in the monks would go and pray and charge water. The same thing the rishis would do in India. They would like bless water. They'll charge it, supercharge it, and then you drink it, and that water then comes in, has a natural intelligence with an intention that goes in and heals the body, or it changes your emotional state, makes you feel better. It could just be incredible placebo effects, but placebo effect is something we need to pay attention to as well, okay? Because placebo effect generally has outperformed a lot of drugs without side effects.
Yeah.
So we should not ignore the placebo effect. So I don't know if it's just amazing placebo effects or whether there is something more to it, that there is a consciousness that's created with fourth phase water, or it's just that we're switching on the parasympathetic nervous system and turning off the sympathetic. I don't know. It's probably a combination of all of those things, but I love music. I think music is life. It's art. It's music is a language of the soul. The music I like to create is very positive emotionally. The music you hear on the Wim Hof method is all of my music. I produced all of it for him, and I even made some music with him. And it really adds to the ritual, the practice of yoga and meditation and breath work. It adds something to it. It doesn't take away. Some people like to do things in silence, which is also okay, but I believe that the music adds another dimension to it. And for me, because my intention, my purpose is to reach ecstatic states, the highest states of peak human experience possible, because I believe by getting to those states, you become more hooked on that than shit that doesn't really help us get there in a natural way, in a positive way. So by becoming more into your own feeling, more into your own emotions from within, we get less distracted by the external stuff that causes problems. And that's what Soma's about. And I believe the music really adds to that. The breath work, all of that is designed to work together in harmony with each other. And rhythm is life.
It definitely does. I had a quick question also. I read lately that we breathe too much with our chest and we should breathe more with our belly. Would you confirm that?
100%. So the first way to correct your breathing is to observe where you're breathing from. Actually, our lungs are more towards the back. So when we breathe through the belly, what we really want to also do is imagine both sides are expanding. Your back, you're breathing into your back and your belly is rising. This also allows a lot of air and room for your organs of your belly, all right, to breathe as well. So it gives space for the air to for the blood supply to move more freely and in and out of those organs. So you're like flushing the organs with blood as well when you're breathing in and out in a rhythm through the belly. So there's a way to create more energy for your abdomen, all right, as well. So you'll see like Qigong is very much about diaphragmic belly breathing. We're talking a lot about diaphragmic breathing. That's what it is when we talk about belly breathing. So the first way is to observe by putting your hand on your diaphragm or your belly, your left hand on your belly, your right hand on your chest. Which hand rises first? If your right hand rises first, your chest, that means you're actually breathing from only your chest, which actually is where the sympathetic nervous system receptors are. So that causes more stress if you breathe from the chest only. And actually, you'll find when you're running up a mountain, all right, you naturally chest breathe because you're breathing faster because you're getting out of breath, right? And that works together with your body to produce more energy, which allows you to run up that mountain and get to the end. However, that's not so useful day-to-day basis. All right? So the Wim Hof method and things like that, which are more high energy chest breathing, are really good if you want to climb up the mountain. Not so good on a day-to-day basis, in my opinion.
Sitting in an office,
Yeah.
There's one last thing I wanted to ask you about was because I had a podcast actually with an Ayurvedic practitioner friend of mine, and he was advising against vaccines. What's your opinion on vaccines?
That is a funny one because there's no doubt about it that vaccines helped us. Okay, like protect against.
Yeah,
like,
I was a bit surprised.
But having said that, there was a book published in the 1940s. All right. Let me see if I can find it and send you the PDF. Basically, it was written by a guy who was involved at high level in the production of vaccines, and he believes that the whole thing is a scam. It was written in the 1940s. He talks about a lot of evidence actually behind it, and there's a very very deep. I haven't fully read it myself, so I can't like say it's 100% gospel truth, but it seems from a credible source. And I think what happened is this: is that I think what happened, in my opinion, back in those days, sanitation was poor. People lived in much more squalid environments. You know, people were drinking unclean tap water, or they didn't have tap water, right? They were drinking. So the risk of infection was much higher. All right. So infection naturally spread. Nowadays, we actually live in a much cleaner and more inhabitable environment. All right. Back then, maybe the immune system was suppressed also for the fact that we were more malnourished than we are now. Okay. So just like the breath, a little bit of holding your breath gives you a positive stress response that adapts to, so the next time when you're in a low oxygen environment, you become stronger, right? So that has an adaptation that's positive in your body. Just like that, vaccine creates a memory in your immune system towards a danger in the future. However, I don't believe that those dangers that we had back then are on the scale that they were then. Maybe in some areas there are, like in certain areas like in India and Africa where there's a lot of poverty, maybe we need those little positive stress responses from vaccine. I don't know. But maybe nowadays we're being over vaccinated, and the problem with this is that we don't know where those vaccines come from. All right, we don't know the source of the production. We don't know what extra ingredients are going in there. Apart from we do know heavy metals are used. We also don't know whether the intention is pure of the people making these vaccines. Because think about this: if you're the company who holds a patent on a vaccine, and every single person in England, for example, has to take that vaccine, all right? How many people have to take that vaccine then, over time? We're talking billions and trillions of dollars. Who are the most powerful people in the world? It's the drug companies. Because we are enforced to take certain drugs because of fear. If we don't take those drugs, we're gonna die from this disease or that disease. Same thing's happening now with vaccines. We are now being kind of scaremongered into the flu vaccine, which is a load of bullshit. The flu vaccine is a joke. Do not fall for that one. That is a total scam. Okay. And when I saw that in the mainstream happening, that alarm bells went off in my head. Was like, okay, if they can get away with this, which I think is a total scam and money-making scam, then what else can they get away with? And the problem is that we can't even speak up against it, because you saw what happened to Robert De Niro when he wanted to back that vaccine documentary. He got shut down. He was threatened that you won't ever make a movie again in Hollywood. Well, so the powers that be are very, very powerful. And here's why I want to bring everything back to source, which is our breath. Because if we can become in control of our breath, we become self-sufficient, and then no one outside can control us because we become in control. The drug companies educated us out of our ability to control our autonomic nervous system. They said that the only way to control the nervous system is through drugs, and that's why they make so much money out of the parasympathetic nervous system, because they said that you can't control it, whereas we know that we can. All right, I've done it. I healed myself of chronic illness. Yogis have been doing it for thousands of years. So my job as a renegade pharmacist is to give power back to the people, to know that you can make your own medicines, that you are the drug, you are the medicine, you are everything, and that you don't need to rely on a drug company. So for that reason, I think anyone living in this modern day and age, don't over-vaccinate yourself. Take responsibility for yourself. Don't listen to the government for your health advice, because they are working in cahoots with drug companies to make a lot of money, unbeknown to them. Because think about it, right? I'm going to make myself some enemies saying this, but the people who work for governments, unfortunately, you have to question, why did they work for the government? It's probably because they can't get a job doing something else. It's like the last place you want to work, right? It's to work in politics and the government. And this is unfortunately what's going on. Look at the mess in England right now. look at the mess in Europe right now. Like, governments aren't the most competent people, right? And then you're putting your responsibility in their hands. It's madness. You've got to take responsibility for yourself. That's the only way you're going to break free and liberate yourself from a system that's designed to suppress you and not make you grow, because that's how you make money. This system, thankfully, is breaking down very fast, rapidly. But in order to survive the next level, what's going to happen? We must become self-sufficient, because there's going to be a division that's going to happen. It's going to be the people who have taken responsibility, and there's people who are totally giving up their lives to the government, and there's going to become a huge division. And I don't want you to fall down the wrong path. Simple as that.
Yeah, thanks, Niraj. And so what's the best way to get familiar with your work?
Sure. So you're going to give a link to our webinar. I think the webinar is like the best place to start.
Yeah, that's
really
the one I did this morning, and it was like pretty amazing.
Fantastic.
I felt amazing today.
Oh, beautiful, man.
High
so there you
life.
go. Yeah, man, amazing. And then you learn a few tricks there, like straight away, about how to lower your heart rate, how to decrease your heart rate, all that stuff that you can impress your friends with, you know, when you're at a party. And then there's a lot of useful information there about your mind-body connection and how your breath influences that, and how to get into these psychedelic states and things like that. So I really recommend watch that webinar at somabreath.com as well. And if you want like a great like resource for your health, then go to the renegadepharmacist.com, because on there are dozens and dozens of articles, hundreds actually of articles, all with very, very user-friendly, useful tips to protect yourself.
And are you on social media too?
And so social media, we have the Soma Breath group. So when you join our Soma Breath, if you go to somabreath.com, you'll get links to our Soma Breath group. We have like almost 4,000 members on there now, which is amazing. And it's also the Renegade Pharmacist is the Facebook page. I don't use that so much anymore. I use our group a lot more, and our website. So there you go.
And now, if you have a little bit of extra time, I'd love if you could do a little demonstration.
Yes.
That's how we're going to close this podcast, so people can have a little taste of the breath work.
Brilliant. So what do you want? Let me teach you a healing breath technique, okay? Using rhythmic breathing and breath retention. This is what my Swami taught me. This specific method is exactly what my Swami taught me in 2010. This one method, and it's what helped me heal from this chronic illness that left me housebound. Very simple.
Amazing.
All right. It's
used as people are driving. Is it unsafe if people drive? Or?
Yeah, like try and maybe park the car up. If you're driving, you know, wait till you get home, just in case, you know, you don't want to lose concentration. You shouldn't multitask when you're driving too much. But you can do the first bit for sure, the rhythmic breathing. Okay. So it's three parts: rhythmic breathing, 2/4 rhythm. So there's a beat, right? That's a beat. In fact, so let me play some music in the background.
Amazing.
Actually, can you hear that?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so this is one of my most popular tracks. Okay, so you hear there's a rhythm. So the rhythm.
Put the music slightly louder.
Yeah. In, 2, out, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, out, 2, 3, 4. So now when you're breathing, the rhythm is key. It's not about like full inhalations and exhalations, right? But you're breathing from the diaphragm, and rhythm is the most key. So make sure your belly rises, then your chest. All right, so your diaphragmic breathing, and you're breathing in for 2. So it's like this: in, 2, out, 2, 3, 4. So the 2, 3, out, 2, 3, 4 is where you're extending the exhale. So it's in, 2, 4. And when you're exhaling, you're just blowing the air out continuously, and you're not pausing. There's no pause between the next inhalation. Okay, so it's a circular connected breath. So in, 2, out, 2, 3, 4. So that is. Through your nose, out from your mouth, okay, to a rhythm. Now you can play with this. You can also breathe in for 4 and out for 8. So it's always half the time, right? In and double the time out. So in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Like that. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now fully in. Now make a tone like this. Ah. As long as you can, make that tone. And when you can't hold your tone any longer, your breath. No air. As you're holding your breath, hold it for as long as you can. Let's say this mantra. I am whole, perfect, strong, loving, harmonious, and happy. I am whole, perfect, strong, loving, harmonious, and happy. Just repeat that. And when you get a real big urge to breathe, breathe fully in and start the process again. And just keep repeating that process for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and you'll go into this very deep relaxed state. So in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So always extending the exhale, like not not breathing all the air out very quickly, just extending it to that rhythm, keeping it continuous. Do that for about 5 minutes, then let out a tone on the exhale for as long as you possibly can, then hold your breath for as long as you can, and then repeat that mantra during that time, and then breathe in and repeat for 5 minutes, and then repeat that process, and you just keep doing that, and you'll find gradually every day you'll be able to hold your breath and make that tone for longer length of time, and that will be a sign that your vital capacity is getting better, your health is getting better, mitochondrial function is improving, and you're generally on the whole becoming healthier.
Thanks. I'll need to make sure I did it right though. But so it was basically there was the cycle breathing, and
Yeah.
then you do the Om, and then you. What I didn't understand is I was holding my breath, but you told me to repeat the mantra.
You hold
Is
your
it
breath and repeat it in your mind.
in my mind? Okay, yeah, just
Yeah.
okay. It was actually
Yeah.
And then when you're done holding your breath, do you repeat this? You repeat the cycle,
Yep.
and you
5
yeah.
of 2/4 rhythm.
Yeah, and then you do the same.
Yeah. Or
Okay.
4/8 rhythm. 4/8 is going to be more relaxing. 2/4 is going to
Okay.
be more energizing.
Okay. Is
Yeah.
that meant to warm up your body? I feel really warm.
Yeah, because you're getting more blood flow to your belly. You're creating. You switched on your parasympathetic nervous system. If you get a heart rate monitor, like a heart rate variability monitor, like HRV app called Sweetbeat HRV, actually tells you when you're in a parasympathetic state or sympathetic. You'll see it switch from sympathetic to parasympathetic in minutes, and you'll feel this like more blood flow to your stomach. You'll feel hungrier. Your appetite will improve, and you'll get a bit warmer. You'll feel like a dilation around your body because your blood vessels dilate, right? And then you will become more in a healing state. So when you're talking to yourself with that mantra, like you're saying those words, you're basically programming your cells, especially heart cells, to feel like everything is well, everything in your environment is okay. So what that does is it actually reprograms your DNA effectively, to have less fear and be more accepting of this environment. So if you're in an autoimmune disease, it's basically fear of the environment to the point where you fear yourself, and then your body starts to kill itself, attack itself, right? Because it's constantly under fear. So a lot of autoimmune conditions are triggered by oversensitivity to the environment. So we need to calm the cells down. We have to tell them everything is okay, everything is well. That's why that mantra is so good, because I am whole, perfect, strong, loving, harmonious, and happy. It's all of the positive statements of a functioning human, right? So I say that over and over again. I used to do this in a sauna. I used to do exactly that process in a sauna on repeat. And I'd sometimes stay in that sauna for like 3 or 4 times longer than anyone else, because I'm getting to such a deep, like, therapeutic state that you forget that your body temperature, you actually adapt to the natural body temperature, so you can stay with the heat, and the heat doesn't affect you so much, so you can stay in a sauna much longer, and that is actually one of the most healing environments you can create. Is a sauna, is like doing this breath work in the sauna. That's what the Russians still do. They do the banyan, the Siberian shamans, they do this ritualistically, they do it religiously. We have sweat lodges in Mexico and places like Temescal. They all do these breath work within the sauna in the heat, and that is my church. That's my. If you want to ask me what's my church, that's the church. Yeah.
Sorry, just quickly, because I want to integrate a bit of breathwork in my routine, and I'm a Vedic meditator. So I wanted to know, what's the right timing? Would it be before the meditation?
There's no for this breath work is best on an empty stomach.
Okay.
So when you wake up on an empty stomach with like clean bowels, if you can.
Okay.
So you don't, you're not needing to go to the toilet, you're not feeling bunged up, is the best time. However, like to actually meditate on a different, level of meditation, which is more like the Vipassana Buddhist type of meditation, or this mindfulness meditation, that should be a daily thing. Like every day, every moment of your day, you should be present in the moment of what you're doing. And that should be like a daily thing. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'll probably do before, because that's usually when I do a bit of pranayama, and that could replace a bit.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a good preparation. Also, a good preparation for people who do visualization work, to be in a more beautiful state, I guess.
Yes.
Well, good. Thanks so much, Niraj. It's been like an hour and 25 minutes. So thank you so much for your time. And you're obviously very, very passionate about it, and sharing it with me and the audience is really amazing. So thanks.
Brilliant. No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
And thank you everyone who listened. This was Niraj Naik, and I really, really encourage you to do the webinar, which was amazing. So I'll post a link. And yeah, I think like the more I got into breath work, the more I can see how like the effect on health, levels of happiness, mood, and how it's been actually studied a lot. So give it a go, guys. And thank you, Niraj.
Thank you. Been an absolute pleasure. So I'll see you soon on our webinar.